Online dating is possibly one of the worst things that have ever happened to relationships between men and women in the history of the world. Never before has it been easier to meet a potential mate that lives practically anywhere in the world with just a smartphone and an internet connection. And with just a swipe of your finger, you could meet the potential mother of your kids and partner for life till death do us part. But in the midst of all the convenience, reach, and innovation, we find that it has had the opposite effect of what was intended. Regular everyday men who are not of high status, highly attractive, make six figures, are not built like a Greek god, and are not 6'6", are left out of the dating marketplace created for said men to have a chance at meeting a woman. However, men who do fit the high standards have their pick of the women on these dating apps who are practically throwing themselves at these men. So why is that? Why do we see more single men and women in the history of America when it is easier than ever before? First, we must look at hookup culture and its effects on society to see where it all went wrong. Women have always yearned to be sexually liberated and have the ability and choice to sleep with the men they want instead of who they had to settle for. So when the womanist movement fought tooth and nail to give women their freedoms and remove the authority of men over them, for the first time in history, women finally got what they wanted. They became liberated and free to choose whoever they wanted and finally have a say in relationship dynamics. Before, when their fathers and men in power had control over who they selected, they could not get to choose the men they really wanted. But now that the father and men's leadership was no more, they had the option to do whatever they wanted without anybody stopping them. The problem was not fixed yet because women could still become pregnant. So even though they could, in theory, start to go out under cover of dark and fornicate like rabbits, there was a hefty price to pay and consequences that came with it. They could not turn off or on the pregnancy switch, which meant although they were free to ride the CC, they could still get pregnant. Then the issue of keeping or identifying the fathers of the babies created from women with sex outside of marriage was another issue. But all of that was soon to change, leading us to where we are today. Then came the 1970s, and by that time, the birth control pill was already invented, and no-fault divorce was legalized. Combining the two led us to the hookup culture we see today. Now that women no longer had to worry about getting pregnant, they could turn the on and off switch for when they wanted to get pregnant. No-fault divorce incentivized the women and courts to push for divorce for monetary reasons. This meant women were free to start having bedroom fun for the first time in history and never had to get pregnant as a result. So what happens when you remove accountability and consequence from women? They doubled down and started hookup culture as we know it today. And with married women having the ease of divorcing their husbands with no-fault divorce, they exploited the opportunity. The divorce rate started to skyrocket, making more single women available on the sexual marketplace to ride the CC and compete for the top-tier men. This is what caused the downhill of relationships in America, and that was giving women more power. With hookup culture, we have seen more divorced women than ever before, more single women than ever before, more single mothers than ever before, more early terminations than ever before, and the most unhappy women in the history of America. These are just a few negatives that came from the women who have decided to participate in hookup culture in the masses. Women were always sleeping around and hooking up with other men, even married women. But it exploded when women became sexually liberated and they could control whether or not they could get pregnant. But this was just the tip of the iceberg because it was made easy for women to sleep around. But you have to think, where would they meet the men to hook up with? Not many people lived in large cities like what we see today, and the cell phone was not invented either. So women would have to go out in the world and get approached by a man or choose from the selection of men in her small town. But all that was about to change when the cell phone was made available to the public. Every time we've made something easier, it tends to come with a lot of unintended consequences that we did not foresee. And the cell phone was what pushed us to where we are today. Never before had it been so easy to communicate with people from anywhere in your country and eventually anywhere in the world. With just the tap of a few buttons, people could start communicating anytime and anywhere like never before, which made it easier for men and women to date, and the reach of available partners also increased. So women could start dating men outside their area codes as long as they had their number, which indirectly made hooking up a lot easier and accessible for women. And as a result, hookup culture began to grow, and more married women began to cheat on their husbands and participate in hookup culture. So every time we made it easier for women to communicate and have sex with men, they didn't hesitate to take the chance to get their backs blown out and lie free and sexually liberated. And since men could not stop women from doing these things, it worsened over time. But nothing could compare to what was about to happen when social media and dating apps took over. If you thought hookup culture was bad already, it was just about to get far worse to the point where we've reached the point of no return. Enter 1995, the world's first online dating website was launched in the form of Match.com, and this is the birth of the decline of modern dating as we know it. Never before could people around the world meet up and date each other. Before the internet and dating websites, you had to either physically go out in the world to meet someone or start a conversation if you had their number. But now it was totally different. A woman could be lying on the couch in her drawers and spark a conversation with a man living in another state. This opened the possibilities of men and women being able to meet new people that they would have otherwise never had the opportunity to meet. And as it grew and became more widespread worldwide, we now have dating apps that can link people together worldwide, and as a result, what we saw was the end of dating as we knew it. If you've learned anything based on what I've been saying, whenever you give women more choices, they end up being unable to make a decision, or they end up making things worse. That's exactly what happened. The more options women had, the worse their attitudes towards dating and men became, and the more sexual partners they added to their list, which led to the sexual marketplace we see today. Today's online dating landscape can be described as a sore tragedy, to say the least. The average man is practically phased out of dating to the point where these men have become invisible to women in the real world and online due to the ridiculous standards women have placed on men. You see, because of hypergamy and women always wanting top-tier men, they actually believe they can get a relationship because they can sleep with these men. So they raise a bar so high that only the top-tier men qualify, and the average man is cast away to the wayside to be retrieved after hitting the wall. Not only that, thanks to the womanist movement feeding women the Kool-Aid of BS, they have grown to hate men, especially those they deem as beneath them. So they treat these men as less than, to the point where it gave rise to the men going on their own path movement. And this was the point where dating was now on its last leg. We already know the massive red flags that modern women have acquired over the years that have made them undateable. We know the extra fat around the gut that tipped the scale towards fewer men wanting to date women. We know the stinking attitudes that XXs have towards the men they think they are above. We know the delusional dating standard of modern women. We know the "we hate men" movement that has turned a lot of men away from women. We see the thirsty simps giving these average and subpar women validation that boosted their ego and raised their self-worth, leading to no man's land. And we know the divorce rates have made men scared to even want to date modern women. But nothing came in comparison to the death of dating, like when men decided to walk away entirely from dating. This one move by men has single-handedly destroyed dating and relationships as a whole, leading to more and more XXs each year dying alone. I explained in a previous video why womanists hate men that left relationships, and it is apparent that women hate men that decide to leave dating and relationships simply because it lets fewer men for them to date or have as a cleanup man. They would never in a million years select these men when they were in their prime, but when the decline comes knocking at their door, now they want the good men. Well, the thing is, men aren't going for that anymore. Instead of correcting their behavior, which is obviously not serving them well long term, they would rather hate men and blame men for their shortcomings in dating and relationships. So do you think I would care about any of them dying alone? Women and simps are the ones that ruin dating, not men as a whole. And the decline is so far gone that it is practically impossible to return to normal. As long as women can monetize themselves, select top-tier men, drink the womanist Kool-Aid, and go on dating apps and social media sites to seek attention and validation from thirsty simps, dating is never coming back. As long as women continue to divorce great men to kingdom come and hold their kids hostage, dating and relationships will never come back. And as long as more and more of our soldiers join the fight and continue to hold the line and strengthen our defenses against modern women by never going back on the plantation, it will be the death of dating as we know it. Men, the best decision you will ever make as a man is to either stop dating entirely or live the free agent lifestyle. There is no better option in today's dating landscape, so I implore you to continue holding the line and prepare to live your life for yourself and eventually die peacefully alone. Tap the thumbs up button and subscribe for more hard-hitting RP content. The links to our PayPal and Cash apps are in the description box below to support the channel. Men, the 3 tenets of the free agent lifestyle will literally save your life. Always live by these 3 rules: no cohabitation, no long-term relationships, and no marriage.